Good morning, I'm Maiki Oreta.
And I'm Jack Madrid. Welcome to Industry Beacon, where we shine a light on the trailblazers, the disruptors, the titans of industry, shaping our future.
We're not just talking about success stories here, we're diving deep into their hearts and minds to see what drives them. Now today we take a look at the thriving IT industry with one of its biggest players globally and locally, IBM. IBM Philippines in particular has been in the country for decades, providing IT expertise and delivering top-notch tech services and business solutions.
That's right, Maiki. To name a few, those services include cloud computing, artificial intelligence, and enterprise software to business. IBM is also involved in a number of partnerships to advance digital transformation.
And here with us today in the studio is Sanjiv Gupta, the President and Country Head of IBM Solutions Delivery and Business Services in the Philippines. Hello, Sanjiv, and hello, Jack.
Hi, Maiki. Hi, Jack. Thanks for having me here.
All right, I'll fire the first shot. Now, IBM is one of the oldest and largest tech firms in the world, over a century old. You reinvented yourself in multiple tech eras and economic cycles. You invented the typewriter, the magnetic strip card, the floppy disk, the ATM, and the world's first smartphone, which doesn't look anything like the ones we have today, but it was a start. What is IBM doing today, and what are you doing specifically in the Philippines?
IBM's core mission today is to help the digital transformation of our clients, leveraging hybrid cloud and AI. That's our mission statement. Now, in the Philippines, we have been here since 1937, which is like almost 87 plus years. And I'm proud to say that Philippines was one of the first 6 countries globally for IBM to start its operations. And today we are present in 170 countries, so you can imagine, right, the history that we have got in association with the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward to today. I mean, technology is moving really, really fast, and IBM continues to be relevant and driving this digital transformation. How would you describe the current landscape of IT, Sanjiv, specifically in the Philippines, and how do we stack up compared to the globe?
I will respond to this in 3 parts. The first is about the market. The second is about the type of work that we do out of the Philippines. And the third is about talent. So let me first get to the market. Globally, I think there are only 2 countries which are truly doing global delivery work in technology. One is India, the other is Philippines. Every other country is either a regional service provider or a local in-country service provider, right? Now, for the markets that are addressed by Philippines, it's largely US dominated, mostly for the US. Plus domestic here in the Philippines, because this is one of the fastest growing economies today, most of the players are the boutique companies which are addressing this. So these 2 are the major drivers of IT industry here. Second to that would be work that is getting done for Japan because of the Japanese native presence that we have out here, plus the language capabilities that are present in the country. I would say a third and the fourth would be possibly Europe and Asia Pacific. So that's the market coverage. The type of work, majority that gets done in technology consulting out of the Philippines is largely application management services, which is like supporting the global applications of different enterprises. That gets done out here majorly. Since the US market is the dominant market, most of the work that gets done here is in night shift here in the Philippines, which is daytime business hours for the Philippines. Now, coming to talent, which is the third aspect, any enterprise globally typically looks at 3 parameters when they choose where to get the work done by, right? The first parameter is scale of talent. The second is the cost of the service that comes out of there. And the third is subject matter expertise, which is typically that comes with the experience. Now, Philippines, if I take aside India, right, which is possibly the mothership of offshore delivery today, Philippines wins hands down as compared to any other country when it comes to scale and cost, right? I think where we need to put our energy and focus, right, would be on developing that subject matter expertise and developing the experience, right? And I think, Jack, it's like homecoming for me when we spoke about these topics in Promptly Speaking as well, right? I really look forward to Filipinos who are in other countries today to find an ecosystem here to come and leverage their expertise that they've gained there to kind of develop it here, right?
Sanjiv, let's pick up on Filipino talent because there's this perception that we don't really have the requisite IT skills here in the country compared to India. Now, how would you respond to that perception? Because you've been a leader in developing Filipino tech talent.
I think it's only a timing issue out here, why that perception has got created. India also started with a very young workforce, right? And I'm talking about, let's say, about 1.5, 2 decades back, post Y2K, boom, when offshoring really took up. Philippines today has the youngest talent pool worldwide. The average age of the workforce out here in IT BPM industry is just 24. Yeah. India is 28. If you go further on, China is 38, US is 42, you've got Japan is 48, and so on and so forth, right? The fact that it's a young workforce, right? Majority of the tech talent, which is where I would say the shift is happening in the country. We all know Philippines is the global leader as far as BPO is concerned, right? That's where the image has, kind of built. The current pool of talent is actually shifting towards IT. You can see the number of grads that are coming out of, engineering colleges here in computer science and information technology. It's really going up. Now, that being the case, the talent is young. When I say young, you get the supply largely in the, I would say, in a pyramid. That is where the teams are typically formed at the lower layers, right? People who would do testing work, people who would do, I would say, the repeatable designs and configuration and so on and so forth in the applications. That's the reason why there is a perception that possibly Philippines doesn't have, because you're looking still for the subject matter expertise, right? Mm-hmm. Having said that, I still believe that the boutique companies out here are doing a very good job, because they are catering to the needs of the local enterprises out here, and they have got some rock solid talent, right? And I wouldn't be ashamed of saying that we do look for to hire actually a lot of those talent here in IBM, right?
Yeah, okay. Speaking of talent, I wanted to get a deeper sense of what IBM does, particularly in the Philippines, to understand where we can fill the talent gap. Okay, that said, IBM Philippines has 3 parts to your operations here. You service the domestic market, and you've got exports for tech and processes. And I understand that your biggest client on the domestic market is BPI, and in terms of exporting what you do, your biggest clients are T-Mobile, Ernst & Young, and others that can't be named. Can you talk to us about what you do in the Philippines, Sanjiv?
Okay. So as I said, the 3 entities that you talked about, domestic is one entity, which is IBM Philippines, right? BPI, we are literally catering to all the banks out here, right? Technological services. And that's about their digital modernization. I think amongst all the ASEAN countries, Philippines is one of the, I would use the term last frontier right now in terms of digital transformation. Now, coming to the other 2 entities, technology, our biggest focus today, right, is around, of course, the world is talking about AI, right? How to leverage AI to transform the way the business process operations are done, right? And we have got this offering called as AI First BPO, which is the, the process services entity that services to. The interest out here of this conversation is around technology, right? Consulting, which is the 3rd entity, IBM Solutions Delivery. 2 areas which I would say are at the top of my list today in terms of work that gets done. The first is cybersecurity, right? This area is really booming in terms of, and why? I think cybersecurity has been of importance for not of late, right? It has been there for decades, right? But since the time that the entire digital economy has come to the hands of every individual, every human being, which is our smartphones, the game has shifted completely as far as cybersecurity is concerned. Today, none of us know where our personal information is floating around in which part of the world, right? Last week, I got access into my personal email account, Outlook account, and it was trying to log in. And it said it's coming from China. Fortunately, Outlook has got two-factor authentication. In addition to the password that you enter, they also flash on my mobile to say, do you allow login for this access which is currently being asked? So I went and denied that. But my worry was that this scamster somewhere actually has got my password. And that's the reason why he was able to get to the first. Now that's one. With the advent of AI, and Gen AI is kind of, you can do voice modulation, all the contacts that we have got on our cell phones, right? These contacts, you will get a call from them, and AI is helping them exactly speak like your contact. And they could be like, a relative, a friend who says, I'm in distress, I need some money, and we have got people who are transferring funds in the process. So this is happening in the world today, and that's why cyber security is #1 focus as far as I'm concerned in terms of the technology that we see coming in terms of work for us in the Philippines.
Welcome back to Industry Beacon. Let's continue our discussion with author and web psychologist Natalie Nahay. Natalie, we were talking about skills before the break. Let's continue on that. Because Filipinos have been reading and are concerned.
Yes.
About what's going to happen to their jobs. What am I studying? Is it relevant? Am I going to have a job after I graduate? Yeah. With all this hype about AI. So let's pick up on that. What are the other kinds of skills should young Filipinos be preparing for?
Well, one of the things, and I'd like to answer that with an example. Last year, in 2023, Goldman Sachs made this big prediction, and they said that we're going to see 300 million jobs lost or degraded by AI. And this is big hype around anxiety of job loss and how to be prepared, these questions. And a year on, a couple of weeks ago, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, in the Financial Times, there was an article that was written about people in the legal profession. And we know that there are huge amounts of text that people have to read and write in legal cases. It's grueling, it requires a huge amount of mental effort. And most of us, many of us, feel very overloaded with the amount of work that we have to do. And this article was citing seniors within the legal industry, saying that actually when associates come in, when they enter the legal industry, if they end up using tools such as Claude or ChatGPT to do the work, they're not going to do the learning that they need to be able to learn what they need in their industry, to have the grit, the perseverance, the knowledge, the expertise, to then make good judgment calls. So when they get to a point of senior management, they'll have basically impoverished their understanding because they've outsourced all this stuff at the beginning. So I think there are some interesting questions around where and when we use technology. And despite the hype, people in positions of authority are being more thoughtful about the long-term impacts and thinking, okay, what is it actually that we want to teach the younger people so that we're not just using tech as like a cognitive prosthesis, like an extra limb, and then we're making ourselves dumber because of it. So I think in terms of skills, that would be one of the key skills. It's discernment. When do we need to use this? How do we check the quality? How do we get to make sure that people are educated in a way where they're actually reasoning, they're learning how to discern good from bad? And that key skill, that's the foundation stone, if you like, for everything else, because then it makes you more able to make quality decisions about how you use the technology appropriately.
One of the things I remember about your presentation at the summit was the importance of that spark of
Yes.
creativity.
Yeah.
Filipinos are known to be very creative people, and I want Filipinos to feel confident about
Yes.
that. How can we use that creativity with AI?
Yes, so when it comes to things like communication, services, hospitality, creativity and imagination and rapport, being able to read someone's body language, their needs, interpersonal relationships, that's complex stuff. And if you're naturally more good at it or you're oriented towards that, those are the kinds of skills that are harder to replicate. So if you know that you're having a conversation with someone and the conversation isn't landing and you can see them start to shut down or they're uncomfortable or the language is perhaps not quite right, we can adapt in real time. We don't even think about it consciously much of the time. But that kind of stuff is hard for machines to do at the moment. So these sorts of skills which rely on that psychological, empathetic emotional intelligence, those things are things that we can focus on augmenting in people because it's going to be more important as we go on.
Because AI or a robot cannot.
It can't. And then I think the other thing
empathize.
is, it can give us a sensation that it understands, but is it going to reach out and hold the hand? Is it going to be able to give us that sense of connection, belonging, some of the things that we yearn for as humans, that we have this understanding for? And the answer, I think, in the short term, is it can only meet a certain level of that need. It can't fulfill the complexity and richness that we hope.
The other thing I wanted to take up with you is all the billions of dollars that are being invested by all these companies, tech companies in AI. And I read an article today that said, investors are expecting a return on all that investment. And because of that, maybe this is a hype, at least for now. What are your views on this thing?
So caveat, I'm not an investor, but I do know people who are in that world. I think from what I've seen, there are certain use cases for AI which are more narrow in scope that are returning value on investments. When we're talking about things like chatbots, where the public are using these all the time, I include myself in that number, the cost of each search, which I'm doing for free, in terms of the huge amount of electricity that's being needed, the huge amount of water that's being needed, that's meaning that in the US now, nuclear facilities are being put back online, or there's the intention to put them back online, just to service the extra electricity needs, the resources required. That's also part of the picture. And so I think investors obviously need to know that they're going to get money back. But if they're not even starting to see return on investment on the newest models, which are still hallucinating more than we'd hoped, and the electricity and water costs are going up, and there's issues around things like flooding and climatic change causing issues at places like, places where you get some of the raw materials, like all of these things are interconnected. So unless we're getting real return on investment soon, I think there is going to be an adjustment in terms of what people are willing to invest.
That does sound like we're in this hype.
The Gartner hype cycle.
Wow.
Yes, yeah.
Does that mean, you were talking about energy, does that mean that every time we do a prompt or we prompt ChatGPT to produce something, we're consuming a lot of energy?
We're consuming a lot because it requires a huge amount of computing power. And the more complex the model, the more computing power is required. And of course, people will say, well, okay, we're getting increased efficiency, so the computing use goes down, or that the needs of the electricity and the resources goes down. But what we see time and again is that as machines, technologies historically become easier to use and the efficiencies mean that the cost is lower, it doesn't reduce the overall cost because people use it more. So it just ends up becoming this kind of increasing graph of electricity use. So it's a complicated argument to make.
We've seen these cycles before, right? Metaverse,
crypto,
RPA,
NFTs,
cloud. Are we headed towards the same thing or even worse?
I mean, I think we are definitely on the slope towards the trough of disillusionment, where we have a course correction in terms of what's hype, what's reality, where can we use this technology, what are its limitations, and then figuring out a more sensible approach where we're not just running off the hype of inflated expectations and stories from people in positions of leadership within these tech companies who want us to believe that this is going to be the panacea. It's not. It's going to radically alter how we live, yes, but it's not going to be the way that they think because we have all these other constraints. So let's be more sensible about it and see things as they are.
This morning, I met with a classroom full of academics, owners and deans of universities, and I told them never before has it been more important to focus on specific domain skills. Whatever students choose to study as their area of concentration, pursue that, because never before will it be more important in the age of AI to be good at what you do. So my question is, how do you envision AI and humans finding this optimal balance of working together?
Oh, that is such a good question, Jack. I think there are some clear use cases where it can be really helpful. So for instance, if I'm thinking about, let's say, a podcast or a TV interview like this, where you want the transcript, brilliant. AI is great at that, converting video and audio into text that you can then read through, you can distill it, you can create presentations out of it. So for the analysis and synthesization of data, as long as you can qualify the output and check that it's accurate, that can be fantastic. For pattern recognition, it's great. For teaching people language, you can train an agentic AI to talk with you and correct you in a second language as you learn. What are my most common mistakes? I want you to help me with my past tense verbs or whatever it is. But it cannot replace, in my opinion, the richness of interaction that comes from being with a real teacher, for instance. So my concern is that we end up creating this two-party society where people with greater resources have access to human teachers with augmentation from AI, and the others just have that AI interaction, which is easy to manipulate. It's harder to, there's an explainability issue. What happens when it's just a black box? You also don't know if the quality of the output is high and consistent. So there need to be checks and balances, guardrails, legislation, protections, human rights, cognitive liberty, which comes further down the line when we're talking about biometric sensors and how AI interfaces with that. There's a lot that we need to figure out now about how we want to live and protect citizens and bring them into the conversation, you and me and everyone else who's listening and watching.
Last question, because
Okay.
we have 1 minute left. I'm going to ask you to pretend you have a crystal ball. What kinds of jobs and types of work will be most affected in the next 12 to 24 months by AI, if any?
Yeah, the jobs that are most automatable. So I think in terms of things like robots, it might be stacking shelves. If you've got a task that you do again and again, like in a factory, if you're doing language translation, potentially, those sorts of jobs I think could be initially more at risk.
Okay. Well, that was certainly very enlightening, but that is it for today's show. I am Jack Madrid. Thank you so much to our valued guest, Natalie Nahay, for sharing your perspectives with us. Catch us again tomorrow for more enlightening discussions on Industry Beacon. You can catch BNC on Free TV Channel 31 and on Signal Channel 24. Thank you for watching BNC, the Bilyonaryo news channel, always on top.